Hi, this is Lainey Cameron, and I'm so excited to be here with friend and author Sherri Leimkuhler today. Hi, Sherri.
Hi, Lainey. How are you?
I'm doing great, doing great. And we're going to talk today about What's Left Untold. So I actually had the chance to read this one, and what I said in my own review is so twisty. Didn't see the ending coming. And I completely agree with Rebecca's feedback. Rebecca Hodge is another debut author whose book Wildland came out this year. And Rebecca's comment on thought-provoking is so true. Even shocking is one of the words I heard to describe the ending. And I looked at your Goodreads reviews, which are great. And the consistent things people say are lots of twists, thought-provoking, no easy answers, secrets, shocking, didn't see that ending coming. That's got to be pretty fulfilling as an author to hear that people really appreciate it and you managed to surprise them with the ending of the book.
Yeah, that's a great feeling. It was one of my biggest goals writing the book because my favorite books to read are books that take me by surprise that I can say, oh, wow, I didn't see that coming. So when I start getting that feedback, that was really exciting. And I also wanted to write a book that would create great fodder for book club conversation.
I think so. I put in my own review that it's a perfect book club book for exactly that reason. So let's talk about your inspiration behind the book. Where did the idea for this come from?
This is fun to talk about because, of course, with fiction, the book is not about me or anybody I know, but the inspiration for the book is seated in a real life event in that my parents were getting ready to move and I was at their house helping them, pack up boxes, and I discovered a trunk of childhood memorabilia of mine that had things from middle school through college, yearbooks, photo albums. I like to say there was a pair of leg warmers because I found that really entertaining, and a box of letters. And as I was reading through the letters, one of them had a postscript that just caught my attention. It was kind of ominous, sort of secretive, said, I need to see you. I have something important to tell you. And at the time, I just kind of blew it off, figured it's not important. It's just high school drama. I don't even think I kept the letter. But later I started to think, what if it was important? What is something you could learn 20 years later that could still have a major impact on your life? And that's how the premise for the book began.
Tell us a little bit about the book itself.
Okay, the book is the story of a woman who reunites with her estranged best friend and uncovers a devastating secret that threatens to destroy the life she's built with her husband and daughters. And the tagline is every secret has its price. So it's definitely a story about a woman that's reconnecting with a friend who, when they were teenagers, the friend Leah walked out on Anna's life with no explanation and left her very hurt and confused. And 20 years later, they reunite, but there's a secret. There's a big secret at the core of the book that kind of makes everything unfold from that point forward.
Is there anything you had to cut from the book that readers might be surprised or interested to know was in the original story that didn't make it to the final?
I think the most interesting thing about the book is not so much what was cut as what was changed. The original version was a chronological format. It started with the main character, Anna, as a teenager and followed her through to present day. So the book is now written in flashback format. And as a result, the parts that were cut were more of her teenage years. There was a little more in the original book about her teen years and her relationship with her family and her high school experiences, but we didn't need as much of that in the flashback format. So now the book does flash back to the high school years, and that's kind of interwoven with the story that's otherwise, spans a large period of time in Anna's life.
And I know I love those flashback scenes because they're very much 1980s scenes. I remember humming along to a couple of songs that are mentioned in the book as I was reading it.
Yeah, making the playlist for the book was a lot of fun. That was something I didn't anticipate doing in the beginning. And then I was like, how much fun is this going to be? And it was great to take me down memory lane too with that music.
I'll put the link to the playlist in the video here when we post it so people can find it if they want to find your playlist. What did you enjoy reading recently? Have you been reading more or less in pandemic world? And what have you been reading?
I am usually a very avid, voracious reader. I always have been. And that said, I've always been a book, like a book. I like a book in my hands, but I have started reading on Kindle so that it's faster and easier for me to get books by my fellow authors, my fellow debut authors. So that's been what's really been keeping me going. And right now, as you know, I'm reading your book on my Kindle, which is awesome. It's such a fun ride too, about power and sexism in Silicon Valley, which is being released in less than 2 weeks. So I'm really excited for your party. I actually have this one in book form. I read Elmar's The Missing Sister when it came out, and you already showed on your slide Rebecca Hodge, Wildland. I read that, highly recommend. It was really good. I've read Maureen Connolly's Little Lovely Things, and she was, I believe, a debut 19 author. And I've read Alison Hammer's You and Me and Us, and every book has been amazing. So there are so many good books coming out. I need to get my head back in gear so I can be reading them more and faster.
Yeah, I've got to say, not because I'm in it, but the debut class of 2020 books is amazing. And I'm also trying to read, like you, as many of them as I can. And wow, they're just some great books, right? And talking of which, debut novelists who sound like they really know what they're doing and they've got good skill, do you have any advice for folks who are working on that first book, people who are maybe a little earlier than you with their writing career?
I do. I actually just wrote an article for Women's Writers, Women's Books, which is going to be posted soon. And I had some good time to think about this. And I came up with what I call my 7 points for success in sanity. And I'm not going to go through them in detail, but the first two are to write often and to read a lot. A lot of writers already know, but it's so true that the more you read, the better your own skill at a writer will be. And to write often. It doesn't have to be your masterpiece or even your work in progress, just a journal, to jot notes, sit in nature, write what you see, experiment with poetry, but just to keep yourself fresh. It's a muscle like anything else. When I'm training for a race, I have a training schedule, and that gets me ready to perform. And regular writing, I think, helps you to stay fresh and sharp in the craft. Learn as much as you can, especially about social media. I had a steep learning curve with that, and I'm still learning, so the sooner the better on that. Connect with fellow writers. That's an invaluable resource for sure. Write what you want. Don't be afraid to take risks. Write the book that you want to write. And the last two are to manage expectations and never give up. It took me 11 years. 11 years. I know people that took decades. I know people in their 70s and 80s releasing their first book. And I was very close myself, I'm almost sad to say, to giving up and moving on to something else because I was feeling very frustrated. And another writer, a fellow author, reached out and said, don't quit, keep believing in yourself. And after almost 2 years, 5 months after I had lunch with her, I signed with my publisher. So never quit.
Never quit. Excellent advice. And anything else you wanted to say before we wrap up here?
The other thing I would add is just that I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to connect with book clubs, as we talked about earlier. What's Left Untold is readers and reviewers are deeming it a great book club selection. And so I think we've covered a lot of great things. Definitely being part of the 2020 debuts and the Women's Fiction Writers Association have been some of the best things for my career as far as women's fiction writers and making connections, and the debut authors of having that support system to go through this. I want to thank you for organizing this interview on IGTV and giving me a chance to talk and share my book with readers. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. And talking of connecting with readers, let's talk about how folks can connect with you. So you are on Instagram, Sherri Leimkuhler on Instagram, and I know you're pretty active on Facebook. I think that's your preferred way that you love to chat and interact with both readers and other writers, right?
Yes, I like Instagram, but I'm probably a little more active on Facebook. So definitely reach out either Facebook or Instagram, and I'd love to connect.
Perfect. And thanks so much for joining us today and doing this.
Annie, thanks for having me, and I'm looking forward to your launch in a couple weeks.
Yeah, thank you.